Join the things, links in the description. Deathmark 2 is the third game in the Spirit Hunter series, a series of visual novel adventure games with a focus on traditional Japanese horror stories involving spirits and the paranormal, as well as light adventure game elements and puzzle solving reminiscent of the early 90s point-and-click games. Despite being the third game in the series, this is only the first actual sequel. At the release of the second game in the franchise, NG, it appeared Spirit Hunter would be something of a spiritual series, pun intended, or an anthology series of sorts, where each game would carry the same hallmarks and design philosophies, but would otherwise be unrelated to each other. Similar to what the horror movie franchise Halloween was supposed to be, but they gave up on that idea immediately after the poor reception to the third movie, Season of the Witch. NG, however, did not receive poor reception, but it is now something of a black sheep in this three-part series. Just for a bit of history for those who didn't catch my previous reviews, when Deathmark 1 dropped, I was very surprised by it. I got really immersed in the game, fell in love with its world, its environments, and atmosphere. I would say honestly that I liked the game quite a bit more than most people did, and was happy to gush about it here on YouTube. I may be a bit of a minority as far as the fanbase goes with how much I actually jived with it. When NG dropped, it was a bit of a step down, but I thought it was still quite strong with its twisted stories and environments, and its grotesque monsters and themes. It's not something I would call bad or even a misstep, it just didn't grip me the same way Deathmark 1 did. Then when I heard Deathmark was getting a sequel, I can't say I was jumping for joy. I liked the idea of the series being an anthology, but I was still cautiously optimistic, especially where its crowdfunding campaign raised more than double what they asked for. Everything previewed on this crowdfunding page looked promising enough, but of course then came the delays. From summer 2021 in Japan to December 2022, Deathmark 2 got kicked around to improve the quality of the game, and of course to cancel the Vita version, which obviously I understand. Yeah, I'm not upset at all. This doesn't really matter to me. Who likes the Vita anyway? Who likes the Vita anyway? And there's no denying that when Deathmark 2 released, it was easily the most ambitious and sophisticated Spirit Hunter game so far. The dev team at Experience expanded their capabilities using the Unity engine to add more animation and exploration than ever before, making more organic and seamless encounters. And I would also add ratcheting up the tension if the game wasn't worse than its predecessors in almost every conceivable way. I hate to say it, but Deathmark 2, despite all the effort they put into it, was just a huge letdown. And not even stacking it against its predecessors, it would still be a mediocre game at best. And I would argue, less than mediocre. It pains me to do this for a series that I've been the champion of since it started. But Deathmark 2 goes entirely in the wrong direction and makes for a really boring, lackluster experience. We're gonna get into why in a minute, but a word on this video's structure before we get there. I will be covering the game's story, characters, mechanics, and structure and all that fun stuff before I get into my myriad issues with the game. This is meant to streamline the video and stop me from having to break up certain segments and jump back into them over and over again. So if you only watch half the video, you're not really gonna get my full opinion on things. And who knows, maybe that's for the best. At least for some of you. But for those of you that are here to hear an opinion on the game, which, I mean, it's a review, that's kind of a given, you're gonna have to stick this one through to the end, or at least jump to the final part of the video. With that said, let's talk about the story and characters in Deathmark 2. The story. Deathmark 2 begins 4 months after the events of the first game. A school, Konoehara Academy, has been suffering the presence of a spirit named the Departed. The Departed periodically leaves notes around the school highlighting the imminent doom of its students. However, it is not the Departed themselves threatening the lives of the students. In a manner, they're merely the messenger, and possibly enabler, as they benefit in some way from these activities. The notes imply a separate spirit will be hunting for specific students, never directly named, but singled out through riddles. And thus the mysteries begin. Who is the malevolent spirit? Who is the endangered student? And who is the Departed that seems to be behind it all? Can the student be saved? And can the malevolent spirit be purified or destroyed? Local rumor states the Departed is actually disguised as a student and operating within the school's walls like an average teenager. By the time the activity of the Departed has become routine, our main character from Deathmark 1, Kazuo Yashiki, is known as something of an expert on spirits and how to deal with them. Though Kazuo is hesitant to embrace this reputation, he accepts the headmaster's invitation to investigate the mystery. However, time is of the essence. Only a few days are allotted between the time the departed leaves a note and when the indicated student goes missing, and the cycle repeats. Each chapter puts a different student in the line of fire of a different spirit, these spirits all having ties to the school, its history, or its recent events. The individual chapter mysteries and spirits are largely based on traditional Japanese ghost stories, much like the previous two Spirit Hunter games. And the stories, which do deviate from tradition, still feel like they have a traditional spin to them. Throughout the game, Yashiki employs the help of several of the school's staff, its students, and his former mates from Deathmark 1. Yashiki is viewed throughout the school by some students, and especially the staff, as an interloper, somebody that lends an air of legitimacy to the silly rumors the students spread about ghosts and spirits, and whose mere presence is actively tarnishing the reputation of the prestigious institution. However, his presence there is protected and insisted upon by the school's headmaster, who believes the students' stories are more than mere rumor. Having to answer for the growing report of missing students, the headmaster is willing to try just about anything to put an end to whatever's causing the events at Konohara Academy. This leads to the most interesting of character conflicts between Yashiki and the school staff, many of which seem to hold a mystery within themselves, begging to be uncovered. The gameplay. Where this is a visual novel, most of your runtime will of course be spent reading and navigating the occasional decision-making points. Decisions that do in fact factor into the conclusion of certain events and determine which ending you get. There is technically a good and bad ending, as well as a true ending, which requires replaying a good chunk of the game to get after completing it once. During your investigation segments, this game sees one of its largest evolutions from previous titles, allowing you free roaming abilities throughout the school and its surrounding areas. The closest the series got to this in the past was just allowing you to navigate maze-like areas by selecting which direction to go next and loading you into the next static environment screen. While running around, you can enter many rooms, find staff and students to talk to and hopefully gain clues about the mystery, and also investigate numerous interact points, many of which giving you items to use during suspensive act segments, which we'll talk about soon, or giving you what essentially acts as in-game currency to buy items with. The more of this currency you collect throughout the game, the more your characters also level up, giving them greater spirit power, making it easier to withstand the spiritual attacks and the assault on your mental state dealt by the game's many malevolent spirits. This currency comes in the form of little rotten teeth that can be very difficult to locate at times, or as easy as just hitting the interact button on a clearly marked interact point. The items these teeth can be traded for grant the player permanent stat increases as well, with the in-game store's inventory located in the infirmary, essentially the game's central hub area, getting replenished every chapter. Certain rooms allay the new navigation features to function more like the first two games, presenting you with a more detailed static environment, which you search with your flashlight, uncovering items and solving light puzzles. Throughout the game, you'll also find the occasional special room, which constantly drains your health until you recover the item that's causing the area to function that way. This is a race against the clock and meant as well to essentially lower your HP to make upcoming encounters more difficult. These encounters present as the aforementioned suspensive acts. Each Spirit Hunter game has their own take on these suspensive act segments. This time, when Yashiki encounters a spirit or spiritual force, he and whoever he is exploring with, partners can be swapped out at the infirmary, must navigate their way to victory by using the items and lore gathered thus far to banish, defeat, or put the spirit to rest. Yashiki can act on his own or combine his efforts with his partner. Each choice and combination, for example, Yashiki alone uses a bat or Yashiki with partner A uses the bat, has a different success rate tied to it, but pulling off an act successfully doesn't necessarily mean the choice you made was correct. Further, different partners have different proficiencies, meaning using the bat with one partner might yield a lower success rate than if you brought a different partner with you. A failed act will result in an attack to your SP and your partner's SP if they took part in the act with you. Of course, if you hit 0 SP, you get game over. Since these actions, your choices all have rates of success, there is, of course, a level of RNG at play, so even a correct choice can fail. Good news, however, the more you fail, the more likely you are to succeed picking that choice again. Bad news, failing when you do the right thing is always kinda lame. Presentation. Now, I said earlier I'd keep the cons until the end of the video, but for this part, it doesn't really make much sense to section things off, so this part will be a bit more mixed than the previous segments. To start off, let's look at what you'll be seeing most often. The free roam segments. Visually, it's not bad. It realizes the style and look of the characters about as well as you can expect when transitioning from high quality event CGs to something actually playable, and it reminds me a bit of Tokyo Dark Remembrance. The animation, however, feels and looks notably stiff, and if you have the same eye for odd quirks I do, you'll start noticing shortcuts and limitations in the animation really quickly. A lack of idle animations makes things feel really stilted and artificial, as does our main character's limited mobility, seeming to only be able to look and point his flashlight on 2 different angles. Shortcuts are taken as well by mirroring characters instead of animating them differently when facing different directions. You can see here the headmaster isn't entirely mirrored, as his non-symmetrical hairstyle looks different depending on his orientation. Kazuo, unfortunately, doesn't get off so easy. You can see here quite clearly the sash for his coat has a buckle on only one side. However, while roaming around, it's clearly there on both sides. This is an excessively minor detail that won't affect many people, and I won't say it even affected me, but I have a weird eye for this sort of thing and picked it up almost immediately. Thing is, it doesn't really inspire much confidence when the main character is treated with such cheap shortcuts. And when you deal with these free roam segments for so long, the effects of those cheap shortcuts do add up over time, especially with these free roam segments looking and feeling incredibly flat. In regards to the event CGs, these almost match the previous games in their details and execution, and deliver on the more disturbing aspects the series is known for, though it's hard to say it quite lives up to the heights of previous games with how disturbing they got. I praised the previous games as well for their blend of horror and eroticism, and I gotta say Deathmark 2 also delivers here. Horror and horny just kinda go together. I can't explain it, but I accept it and I enjoy it. I don't think I can show you examples of these things on YouTube, but it's not hard to find if you're curious. And lastly, the UI. I don't like it. I'll be honest.
Just to cut in here, what a terrible way to word that. I'll be honest, like, I'm kind of, not to toot my own horn, I'm always honest here. Like, really, what's the point of being a reviewer if you don't even have honesty? Like, I suppose I could just get on here and lie and hopefully get some clicks telling people what they might want to hear, but everybody's gonna know in the end anyway, so like, you know, what is there really to gain? Let's get back to it.
Historically, I don't think the series has been amazing for its UI, but I do think at least NG was going in the right direction, and the proof of concept for this game from the crowdfunding campaign looked much better. Really, a lot of the game looked better there. Thing about this one is that it's just really boring. It's excessively large and even a little convoluted for how little you actually do with it. The size and scaling of the UI might be due to the expectation of some people playing this on a smaller screen like the Nintendo Switch, but it still seems like overkill to me. I'm just not a fan of it. Nothing about the UI inspires excitement. Something like these suspensive act segments should be presented in a way that heightens the tension and the feeling of the interaction and danger. Instead, aside from the title screen and the success-failure screens, the UI is ultimately very static and very boring. My issues. Now, where to start with my other myriad issues with the game? I'd hate to sound like I'm just being a bitch, but I'm not sure there's a way to not come across like this with how many issues I felt while playing the game. I guess we'll start with something I haven't mentioned at all yet. The music. Deathmark 2 has a very, very small soundtrack, and when calculating for the true end, it's also the longest game in the series. There is no new music in this game that meets the heights of the OSTs from the past 2 games, and the past 2 games already didn't exactly have incredible soundtracks, they just had really fitting and atmospheric ones. I would also like to address this game's status as a sequel. Is it a sequel? Yes, technically. Is it Deathmark 2? Again, yes, technically. But only technically. There is no Deathmark in this game, so the titling makes very little sense. Is that a nitpick? Yes, technically. This is Deathmark 2 only because it uses the characters from the first Deathmark. But how well exactly are they incorporated? For me, not well enough. For the most part, these returning characters feel as shoehorned in as Yashiki does. There's no valid reason, really, to bring all these people back. I feel like the game would have worked better with new characters. You can still have a begrudging spirit doctor without it being Yashiki, and they can still have a network of helpers without them being Deathmark 1 cast members. As it is, none of them have any stakes in the story, no personal involvement. They were just hired to investigate the school and are doing a job. They constantly feel out of place, and I don't mean out of place as characters in the school, they're supposed to be out of place there, but I mean in the game, in general. It feels utterly pointless for this to be the same cast. Sadly, the individual chapter stories and mysteries aren't all that interesting either. The first chapter pits us against a traditional toilet-bound ghost, something that's been around in Japanese horror stories for a very long time, and something even the West has their own versions of here and there. But something that's also very hard to take seriously when the image of fear presented to us in the event CGs are rubber hoses that spray sewage water and move really fast. It also leads to scenes we're meant to take with sincerity of the main character trying to make amends with a toilet that doesn't respond to them. Unfortunately, there's no level of comedy played into this. There was probably a way to do this story and make it worth taking seriously, but this wasn't it. And to make this the first big mystery of the game, it was just a really bad way to start things off. It makes it clear from the beginning this title is missing the spark the past two games had. And while a lot of the event CGs are still good, detailed, and disturbing, it's clear in the designs of the spirits how much that spark was really smothered. What were once the most disturbing and grotesque highlights of the franchise are now goofy, silly looking goobers that probably couldn't scare my 20-month-old baby. And the puzzles. Don't even get me started on the puzzles. Please get started. Most of them, not real puzzles. It's just the characters sinking to unbelievable depths of stupidity, so you can hopefully feel smart when you actually get to do something and solve one of them. And this, I neglected to mention any time earlier, but it's so frustrating. Anytime the Departed talks to your main character, it goes to a black screen and you see all of the Departed's dialogue in red text. And it can take a while to read the text this way. It plays out very slowly. And then, as soon as it's done, you go back to the main screen where the Departed repeats all of the exact same dialogue. You get to read it twice every single time. And I don't know why. I have no idea why. And what makes it even better, even more frustrating, half the time Yashiki's the only one who can hear the Departed, so he repeats it all back a third time for whoever he's journeying with. It's just so frustratingly stupid. Now, there is one issue in this game that if all those aforementioned things were handled impeccably well, I'd still find myself drained by the end. And I'm willing to bet it's still not obvious to you, nor will I say this will be the experience for everybody. But Deathmark 2 is super fucking monotonous and repetitive, and there's one core aspect that made it that way. So to spell it out plainly, the entire game takes place in this one school and scant few locations that surround it. The school is divided into 2 wings, 3 floors each, and both wings and all 3 floors look damn near identical, especially in their layouts. This means for the vast majority of the 15 to 22 hour experience, depending on whether or not you're going for all the collectibles and the true ending, you will be trekking through the same 6 hallways and the same 5 to 6 rooms over and over. And if you are going for those collectibles, you're gonna be retreading those rooms more than normal. And some of those collectibles are just extremely obscurely hidden in the stupidest ways. Ways that defy all logic to find them. Like interacting with the same thing 3 or 4 times that tells you your interactions aren't doing anything. Exploring the school gets tiring very quickly and makes the story feel like it's never actually going anywhere, and it has very little surprises to give you. And sadly, due to the free roam exploration mechanics that work like a 2D side-scroller, the environments are as flat as they come, and it's just utterly draining to keep walking through them. And that is the core word here, draining, because you don't feel it immediately. You feel it even more so when you realize you'll be walking through these same areas for the entire duration of the game. While I feel most chapter mysteries resonated more than the opening chapter, I really have to stress how much the single location aspect of the game drained me as the game went along. So even when I was dealing with more interesting mysteries, my interest in the game itself was still waning. And when I reached the conclusion, then went through the BS to get the true ending, making me spend more time in an environment I was already well and sick of, repeating dialogue and scenes I had already gone through, I was beyond done with the game. Sadly, what's meant to break up the tedium fails to inspire interest as well. The laughable mysteries, characters that feel forced into the game, puzzles that are only puzzles because the characters need to be insanely stupid so you feel like you have something to do, false dilemma gameplay ideas, and horror that doesn't hold a candle to the series' past forays, it's just not a good time. You need variety to mix things up. Deathmark 1 understood this, NG understood this. Variety is the spice of life. I've said it many times in many videos in the past. A pinch of salt is the only spice you get from Deathmark 2, and the game seems intent to rub it into your wounds more and more the longer it goes. What I wouldn't give to go back to the roots of the series. Drop this free roam stuff, give me hand-drawn environments with varying perspectives again. They still exist here in this game, of course, but they're used very sparingly, and it pains the entire experience. When you are trapped in this repetitive cycle for so long, all those small things start to feel much bigger and much more irritating. It becomes your entire focus, because what else are you supposed to look at? What else are you supposed to do? You've been in all these places before. Like this one bit of text we get when looking at this thing here, which I can only assume is a translation error. Like, what does this thing on the ground look like to you? A body, right? Well, no. According to the text, apparently that's the one thing it doesn't look like. And yes, they needed to specify that. This should have been an easy mistake to catch, but here we are. Deathmark 2, from top to bottom, feels much, much more lazier than that crowdfunding campaign's budget would have had you thinking it was going to be. It was just, for me, all around, a disappointing game.
To the team at Experience, I loved this series. Loved, past tense. I hope to love it again in the future. And really, I hope Deathmark 2 finds its audience and that maybe I'm just the outlier that it really didn't work for. But this game feels like one giant step in absolutely the wrong direction, at least for a player like me. I sincerely hope to see the series return to its roots, because I hate, and I mean I really, really hate having to do this sort of thing. I hate having to talk about games in this way, especially from series that I formerly loved and championed so strongly. Part of me considered not even making this video because this type of content just, it's not me. But I've covered every game in the series so far. Yeah, mind you, that's only 2 games. I felt some sort of obligation to keep it going. And what's the point of being a reviewer anyway if all you do is praise every single game that you play? What use would a video on this game be that's just filled with praise when there's so much valid constructive criticism to be offered? So I don't make this video out of malice. I make this video out of love for the team and the efforts you guys have put into the series so far, and what the series used to be. I look forward to seeing how the series evolves from here, and how your team at Experience grows in their capabilities. But I'm not on board for another disappointment like this one. I'm just not gonna gamble on it. If this is the direction for the series going forward, I hope for the best. I hope there's an audience for this game, you know, that really loved it and continues to support your team in this series going forward. I hope that they get what they signed up for, which is not what I thought I got here. But for me, if the next entry doesn't show promise, if I don't see it in any of those other early reviews or any of those trailers, then this is my final stop. I really, really hope my ride doesn't end here. I don't have to get off here, but of course, only time will tell. I hope I get to see you, the audience at home, back here for my Spirit Hunter 4 review when that eventually drops. But more than that, I hope to see myself there for Spirit Hunter 4. I hope to see that flicker of promise that brings me back into the series. But right now, I'm not sure I will be there for Spirit Hunter 4. You probably won't be here for my Spirit Hunter 4 review. Fingers crossed, ladies and gentlemen, for the future of the Spirit Hunter series, but this one really did not do it for me, and I'm just gonna have to leave it at that. But with that, all the regular YouTube sign-off stuff, join my Discord, where we talk about JRPGs, visual novels, shoot-em-ups. The same guy bitches about the same 4 Souls games over and over again for about 6, 7, 8, 9 years going. And like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter/X, Instagram, YouTube, first channel, second channel, RedTube, first channel, second channel. Did I say Instagram already? Blue Sky? You know, whatever, all that fun shit. Whatever. I don't know what I'm doing here, guys. You know what? Thanks for watching. Something really ironic about wearing a smartwatch inside of a pair of gauntlets.